Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook, and thank you for coming back for the second installment of a conversation with Leo Eyler here at Reference Point. He's my guest again today, and we're going to talk more about the California Youth Symphony. And I said your name right this time, didn't I, Leo?
Absolutely. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Well, with a last name like Cokerhook, I like to get people, what can I say? So, when we ended off at our last show, we were talking about what your vision is for the future, and you were mentioning about expansion and growth, not necessarily so much in terms of the number of students that are participating in the organization, but in terms of other kinds of outreach. Could you go into that a little bit more?
Yes. We like to give them a really full musical education. So I think that's different than numerous youth orchestras where they simply play the music. I mean, I myself was a university professor in music for over 30 years. So it's just in my blood somehow to want to teach and to share what I know and just enhance the musical experience. So we do that through a number of different ways. One, we have a very good web presence where I put up a thing called Conductor's Corner, where I talk about, and have these presentations about the pieces, etc. And another one, and which I think has a lot of room for expansion, is the fact that the students really benefit from coachings or sectionals from professional players. So we'll bring in a wonderful trumpet player, for instance, Dave Burkhardt, good friend of mine from San Francisco, and have him coach our trumpets. Get a violinist, coach the violins. So they get that sort of a much smaller, rather than being in the 100 plus size range, they can work very diligently on the music more. And we're actually even instituting more of that this coming seasons as part of our long-range planning. So there's that. There's also the idea that we would like to play, I would like to play more concerts. As we mentioned in the earlier broadcast, we do one concert per set. But that's not the case for the vast majority of the time that CYS has been around. Usually it was two. So we'd play one in the Flint Center, and then the next week we would play up in San Mateo.
The same set in
same
different
set,
locations,
right,
so that you get exposure to a broader public.
Exactly. And the students get a second try.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll have that same situation with what we do in the singing chorus, right? We do all this work to craft a show that has activity and dialogue and skits and all that sort of stuff, and the music, and you do it once, and that's it.
Right.
You know, when I was saying, I mentioned before, I was in musical theater. You do Gilbert and Sullivan. We were there every Saturday for 6 weeks, and on Sundays as well, and so we got to do it a lot. So
exactly.
So how do you deal with that? What are the options for you?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is to find adequate space, as we mentioned before, because it's really tough. I mean, even Davies Hall barely fit my orchestra on their stage. So it's making ourselves known to different venues that might work, and then trying to work well in advance, because many of these places you have to really do it a couple of years
a couple
at
of years
least.
ahead of time, yeah. So how many venues in the greater San Francisco Bay Area are there that could accommodate a group your size? 3, 7, 20?
You can count them on one hand, I think. Maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah.
That
and I'm
really
guessing they're like in different, they're not like clustered in San Francisco. There's one in the city, there's one in
East Bay,
East Bay. Yeah.
Yes, exactly true. Yeah.
But what's exciting about that, if you can manage that, is it gives you the opportunity to have exposure in different parts of the community. And I'm guessing you are drawing your students from all those different areas anyway.
We are. The majority of them are actually from the peninsula and South Bay, although that's one of the things that's changed quite a lot over the years, is the demographics of our clientele. But it would be great, of course, to have wider exposure. And we we are planning to do that. We have had some contacts, as an example, up in Rohnert Park. They have a beautiful concert hall up there, and we're trying to work with them. Again, it's a scheduling thing.
Sure.
And we will continue to try to find venues, and not just right here in the Bay Area too. I mean, we've played a wonderful concert a number of years ago at the Mondavi Center in Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Which to the kids at that time, that was like taking a road trip.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of a road trip, the orchestra recently got back from a trip to Europe, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And so, how long was that? And what all? I mean, how many concerts did you perform, and where, and that sort of thing?
It was a 11 or 12-day trip. We left on the 22nd of June, and the tour came back on the 3rd of July. It was a trip to Central Europe, and we played 4 concerts in 3 countries, Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary. And it was simply magnificent. That's the only word I can say. The orchestra played remarkably well, as good as I've ever heard CYS play,
Wow.
Very large audiences, very appreciative audiences. Didn't want to let us get off the stage at the end of the concert.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, no, it was a wonderful experience for all the students.
What were the pieces?
The pieces were Berlioz's Roman Carnival Overture, the Second Symphony, Age of Anxiety by Leonard Bernstein, which has a huge piano solo, so it's essentially a piano concerto. And then after intermission, Gershwin's Cuban Overture, and ending with Richard Strauss's Der Rosenkavalier Suite. So lots of difficult music, but the audience loved it, and they really loved our encore, which was music from Harry Potter.
Oh, I'll bet. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So how many students went on the trip?
It was something around 85, I would say, 85, 86 students.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bet you they had a blast.
They had 10 blasts.
Yeah.
They really did. It was, and I've gotten emails, Carmina and I have both gotten emails from students that they just had the time of their life.
How often do you do some type of a tour?
We tour every other year.
Every other year.
Yeah.
And is the tour always outside the country?
Yes, they're all international tours.
Okay. And
So-
where have you gone so far over the years? I mean, you've been the music director there for
32 years.
So that would be like 16 tours.
Except for the pandemic year in 2020. So
Okay.
15.
15
Yeah.
tours.
Well, we've been on a lot of continents. We've toured Australia, New Zealand, South America, and Argentina, and Uruguay, Japan, China, and then a lot of countries in Europe. The majority of the tours have been to Europe, so France, Italy.
So
et cetera.
how do you promote that the group is going to be in Budapest, and and to draw the kind of audience that you, because you said, for instance, in this last one, you guys had it was wonderful. You had a large audience and a beautiful venue and
Yeah.
stuff like that. How does that happen? How do you promote? How do people know about you?
Well, we work very closely with a very large touring company that's based in Boston, Encore, which is part of ACIS, and they are the ones that set up the tour. They have staff in Europe on the ground that arrange the halls, for instance, in the venues, and would also be working in terms of the publicity for the concert, so that by the time we get there, we can see the posters up in the city and things like that. So that's one of the really important relationships that we have is with our tour company, who they do a wonderful job setting everything, really almost setting everything up for us.
And do you have an organization comparable to that locally for when you do your own concerts and things?
No, see, now that would just be us or at CYS.
Yeah. So how do you promote? You got a concert coming up later this year. I guess the first concert's going to be what, October, November, or something like that.
Very end of October, beginning of November.
So how do you promote it? How do people even know that it's going to happen, other than it's on your website?
Well, we attempt to put our concerts in the papers, especially the local papers in the South Bay, and not specifically only the South Bay, and word of mouth. And we put up posters at schools, and try to make sure that all the teachers, instrumental teachers of the students, and then also the school directors as well, know about our concerts. We have quite a large mailing list that we send information about upcoming concerts to.
You do any radio talk shows or podcasts and stuff like that? Say, hey, we got this thing. Listen to what my students can do and stuff like that.
Well, I have a new one because I'm going to be here every 3 months. So. Just kidding. But we're trying to do that. It's not as easy sometimes as one would think.
Yeah, I understand.
But back in the day, before everything was all online, it was actually easier to get a lot more, for instance, print material.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen so much anymore.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. People are looking online. You need to do a TikTok video.
Right.
Well, and what's interesting, we talked in the last show about how the students that are your performing students, right? In the orchestra, how they have had exposure to and are interested in the classical music, because a lot of them have private teachers, etc. Or and when they come to you, they read music, etc., etc. How I'm guessing, and this is a guess, but I'm guessing that when you do a concert, that the siblings and friends of the kids that are in your orchestra might be among the audience members, because they're there to support Fred and Mary and whatever. And what's the response to this type of music to that demographic?
Well, first of all, you're right. You're absolutely right in that is what happens. I mean, they do bring family and siblings and friends. And the response, as far as I can tell from where I am and from my spies in the audience, is generally very good, of course, because a lot of those people do music as well, and are involved in, say, their school music programs, or study privately but play in a different youth orchestra. I mean, as you know, there are many different youth orchestras, even in the South Bay. You can count 6 or 7 major youth orchestras. So there's a lot of music going on out there, and I think that they're engaged by it because of our programming too. I think we really make an effort to play exciting yet generally accessible music, and we like to also talk, or I like to talk about it at least a little bit from the stage, and sort of give them give
people a sense of what's really going on, which is very cool. Speaking of talking to people, I'm going to mention to the folks in the audience that if they want to get a little bit more information, go up to the website, cys.org. See, I did it right this time.
Absolutely.
cys.org. Or send a query into info@referencepointtv.com, and we'll get the answers to your questions. So, as you were talking about the getting the information out and whatever, I'm sitting here trying to just think about the opportunities, what the opportunities might be for being able to engage, because and I think not just in terms of letting the public know about it, but I think in terms of just music education and the arts in general, and how relevant that is, and how that feeds so many needs that we have, and impression. My daughter was a fifth grade teacher for a number of years. My impression from some of the things that I've heard in a number of the public schools was that a lot of the programs are not as supported as they may have been, 30 years ago, when or it was a lot more than 30 years ago when I was when I was at that age and in school at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem to be quite the level of appreciation or understanding of how activity in the arts feeds the soul. If that might be, maybe that's a little bit more strange way to put it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there is that kind of engagement factor that's really, I mean, singing for me, it makes my week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing is, I believe that it's not just the soul, because so many studies have been done on the effect of music on the brain as well, and on critical thinking, and how music can really accelerate and enhance whatever field you go into, whether it's engineering or music or philosophy or political science. The things that we do in music have great application to any field of study. And
Expand.
well, for instance, you can consider the fact that a group of people working towards a common goal, right? So this idea of collective work together, which is very important in many fields, being able to work with other people and work as a collective unit. Also, music, by its very nature, requires a tremendous sense of discipline. You're a musician yourself. I mean, the stories that we hear about Mozart, for instance, or if you see Amadeus, yes, is that all true? Yes, to a certain extent, but he worked really hard, actually, at what he did. And so to make music, which is really a very abstract kind of thing when you think about it, requires that kind of discipline that would come in handy in anything that you attempt to do in your life. Mm-hmm. And thirdly, I would say that I find, and I've known many kids, musicians who have gone on to do other things and come back to me 20 years later, for instance, and to come to a concert, and they're back in the Bay Area. And I can see that they have been very, very, very successful. And I think that when you do music and you do music really well, it generates a tremendous sense of confidence, inner confidence. Mm-hmm. And again, that, typical of the arts, is something that really has been shown to help in many different fields. So one can have this list of attributes that music can really make a big difference in a life. And we're not even talking about the whole spiritual, as you say, soul, the aspect of it, which of course to me is everything. Mm-hmm. And their spiritual well-being too, I think, is enhanced by music too.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely. So when a student comes to CYS, they bring their own instrument, I'm assuming.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Almost always.
Almost always.
Except
okay.
for timpani and certain things.
Certain things that they might not have their own stand-up bass, sitting at home.
Yeah, most of them do.
So let's talk a little bit about the public. We got what can the average person do to further your vision for CYS and support this kind of expanded recognition and engagement in the arts here in the Bay Area?
Well, I think that aside from the most obvious one, I guess, which would be to donate, right, to make a donation to the organization, because we run on dues and also donations and grants and things like that. So we certainly always appreciate folks who donate to the organization in any type, any way possible. But besides that, of course, I would say simply attending our concerts. Recall, they're free.
Yeah, which is really mind-boggling that they're free.
And to see, because I will tell you that people who come to CYS concerts who have never been to one before, one of the youth orchestra, they are mesmerized and totally stunned at the end of the concert, because they're not expecting
the caliber
the
of
caliber,
music
right.
Yeah.
They really are not, and yet we give that to them. And I can't tell you how many times it has come up in my career where people have said, "I can't believe what I just heard."
We're going to listen to some of that right now. What we've got here queued up is a segment from the Tchaikovsky piece.
Violin Concerto, yeah.
It's a violin concerto, and the soloist is
Stella Chen.
Stella Chen, and this is the CYS performing this piece. So if you could roll that, that would be great. I watch that piece, and I watch her. The dexterity is phenomenal. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yes, she's an amazing player, and she's gone on to have quite a stunning career so far. So she's one of those soloists that is just definitely going places.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. But the quality, the caliber of the music, this is like, a lot of times, parents think, oh yeah, I'm going to go to old Johnny or little Mary's concert, and and it's like, oh, that was so sweet. This is professional level performances. Okay, and what's stunning to me is that you provide this to the community free of charge. At the very least, what you could do is say free will offering. If you think it was worth something, throw something in. Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because free to come, because a lot of times what I find for me is that certain performances move you. Okay. My wife and I were at at the Saratoga Farmers Market this past weekend, and there was a guy that was playing an instrument I'd never seen before. It was the Chapman stick, I think it's called, or something like that,
okay.
And it was just like, and he was really very good, which was just amazing. So I was like, I can't just walk away from this guy. I got to do something. Something of that caliber needs to have an exchange, because he gave me something.
Right.
So, just doing a free will offering at a concert like that, even if somebody throws in a quarter, they feel like they've done what they can do.
Yes.
That's not a bad thing to do.
Sure. Well taken. Well taken.
I think we have about 3 minutes left in our show here, Leo. So is there anything else you would like to tell us about the organization?
Let's see. I think just getting that word out, that there's something truly special going on here, that should be experienced by the public, because I really believe that music, and in particular, for me, classical music, holds something of great value and great beauty that every one of us can benefit from. And I think that once you begin to see that and to experience it, it sticks with you. And it's something that really is life enhancing. I really believe that the lives that we've touched for many, many years through music have been greatly enhanced by that. And as I said, I have a lot of, not a lot, but numerous kids who come back many, many years later to say hi. And it's just wonderful to see how well they're doing and that they still remember as if it was yesterday, CYS.
That's fantastic. That's really great. One thing I've been meaning to ask you since we got started, and this is kind of should have been one of the questions at the beginning because what you just ended off with was great, is how did you ever get involved? What got you to be doing this? I mean, I know you've been an instructor and you're a professional musician, you're a conductor, it's like it's in your blood and all that, but how did you get to CYS?
Well, I had been conducting other youth orchestras in the South Bay, and I got a call one evening from the executive director, I believe it was, and asking me to come to dinner and talk.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. It's interesting, there have only been, out of these 70 years, there have only been 3 of us who have been conductors, the music directors. So
that's fantastic.
We last a long time. But unfortunately, my predecessor was quite ill with cancer, and unfortunately passed away in that year. And so I came in basically
mid-year.
Mid-year, yes.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. As a temporary thing, but by the end of the year, looking to the next year, they offered me the job.
Well, I think this guy will work out, so let's keep him. Fantastic.
It was a long time ago.
Leo, I really appreciate your coming and spending this time with me for these 2 shows here at Reference Point.
My
it's
pleasure.
been fascinating. I hope the audience has learned something. I hope they've enjoyed what they've heard. And I want you guys to go to a concert. Whenever he puts the information up on his website or however he's going to promote it, sometime in late October, early November, CYS is going to have a concert here somewhere in the South Bay. So you all ought to go. So, Leo, thanks again.
Thank
and
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time at Reference Point.